What's good YouTube? Welcome to my channel, Lars in Conditioning. In today's video I want to talk about how there are people who try to claim that 8 to 12 repetitions is more fatiguing than doing 5 or 6 or 7 or 4 reps. But this is not the case. The reason being is that the reason why they're actually saying this is because there have been studies showing that it's more fatiguing, but when it actually comes to an actuality in the real world, your body will adapt to what you expose it to. So if you always do 5 reps and you then change everything up all at once and then go immediately to 12 reps, in terms of muscle fatigue, yes, it's going to be more fatiguing at first. However, claiming X amount of reps generates more fatigue versus doing something else is just not correct, at least not strictly. There's always going to be a caveat to it. If you're going to say like 1 to 3 reps is more fatiguing than anything else, yes, if those are actually hard reps. So if you are doing 90% of your 1 rep max and doing 2 reps of that, that means you're going to be at a really high RPE, which means you're going to generate a lot of fatigue. But you can also generate a lot of fatigue on the other end of the spectrum doing a really high RPE with 15 reps on squats, but you could also do it with a high RPE 2 reps on squats. The difference is what kind of stimulus and what adaptation you're going to chase, and what adaptation you want your body to get exposed to, ultimately speaking. And this is the thing. So we have different kinds of fatigue. We have localized, systemic, and we can't even say we have a third called CNS fatigue. But for the most part, systemic fatigue does actually cover CNS fatigue. But you can have, without training, you can actually have CNS fatigue. And this can happen from stress symptoms. So that ultimately means if you have a lot of stress, or if you have had multiple days in a row where you have slept poorly, you do not have systemic fatigue necessarily induced from training. However, you do have CNS fatigue because your CNS, or your central nervous system, will not be allowed to basically cool down and then properly recover if you're not sleeping well. This is why sleep is so important when we're talking about training, both in terms of your recovery, but it's also your well-being. So that's why we can actually split up to 3 different kinds of variants of fatigue. And also, if you are not accustomed to doing a certain type of training style or certain type of rep range, the first month, or maybe even a few months, you could experiencing it to be a lot more fatiguing than it actually would be. If you're constantly used to doing 12 reps, you're not going to feel it's going to be all that fatiguing. But if you go from doing basically a very specialized strength style of training, like a strongman like me, and you start doing 12, 10, 15 reps, yeah, sure, you're going to experience that to be significantly more fatiguing than what you are accustomed to. When it comes to the number of repetitions that we're doing in our training, certain exercises, even if it's 5 or 10 or 15 reps, is going to create very different kinds of fatigue in the body. So with the log press for strongman, in your competitions, you're going to have 1 or 2 style of events. For the most part, you could have a third, but you will either have a 1 rep max, a log medley, or a fixed weight for time where you have to crank out as many reps as you possibly can. And depending on how strong you are compared to the competition, if the weight has been set to say 180-pound log for reps and you have 75 seconds to crank out as many as you can, and your 1 rep max is 300 pounds versus someone else's is 250 pounds, obviously you have a strength advantage. But what's going to be fatiguing in your body in that particular instance is going to be the cardiovascular fatigue that's going, because it's not, in terms of your strength or your nervous system, it's not really going to do much for that. It's going to be your ability to push through when you're breathing extremely heavy. So it's going to be a different kind of fatigue that actually builds up. And so you cannot just say X amount of reps creates a certain type of fatigue. The amount of weight, but mostly the exercise that you're choosing. For instance, you could do chin-ups. If you can do chin-ups in a very particular way where you will have very little back involvement, or you can do bicep curls. Your biceps will experience a greater load with the chin-up when you're good with a bicep curl, but even if you take both 10 reps and 10 reps, it's the same amount of reps, but the amount of tension and the fatigue that it will going to build up in your biceps doing a chin-up versus a barbell curl is going to be greater. So the amount of reps that you do, yes, that informs you some way of the amount of fatigue you're going to build up. However, the exercise and the goal behind it is also going to inform you. So a bench press of doing 10 reps is going to create a certain amount of fatigue. But if you do the same 10 reps in a chest press machine, that's going to create less fatigue. So a lot of these people that talks about like, oh, I do 5 or 6 reps because it's less fatiguing. It's simply because they are lazy. It inherently doesn't come with more fatigue. Thank you for watching. Last and conditioning. Signing out.